Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm very, very excited to be here at the Lancaster Insurance Classic Motor Show with Discovery Online. It's been a fantastic thing to do this, and I'm very excited because I'm being joined by two very, very special guests from the Federation of British Historic Vehicles Clubs. To my left, to your right, is Mr. Chairman, and I don't know whether I should bow or curtsy whenever I'm in this man's company because he's just like the god of everything. This is Mr. David Well. How are you, David?
Very well, thank you, Mike. Good
Excellent.
to talk to you.
And the man with a beautiful title, it's so long, goes on a business card, and it's so long his title, it wraps around the back of the business card because he's the Director of Research, Mr. Paul Chasney. Hello, Paul.
Hi, Mike. Good to see you.
Right, so first up, gentlemen, for those out there who have never met you before, because you are front and present always at the big shows that we do in the year, and most people out there, the classic car enthusiasts, will know you are. But for those of you who've never met you before, what is the Federation of British Historic Vehicles Clubs?
So basically, we've existed for 32 years, and we link together all of the historic vehicle clubs in the UK. So we cover everything: cars, motorcycles, buses, lorries, agricultural, military, steam vehicles. And we've got, I'm delighted to say, through the member clubs, 250,000 enthusiasts in the UK.
That must be the biggest club almost in the world. That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
What an amazing number. So you've done some brilliant stuff recently, and I'm very pleased that you've come to us with it because this is a first, and we've got a real exclusive, and it's an exclusive that we can share with the enthusiasts out there to let them know just what our world is like. And that news is that you guys have conducted a special survey, and it's the biggest survey of its kind that's ever been conducted in the world. Can you tell us a little bit about the survey?
Yeah, sure. So this is something that we do every 5 years. And the idea is actually to value the historic vehicle market. We've been doing this report from 2006, and basically it just gets bigger and bigger, which is brilliant. You know, we'll see in a few minutes some of the numbers that have come in, and frankly, they're mind-boggling every 5 years, which is brilliant.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. And I was just saying to Paul before we come on, I was saying that we are in a world at the moment where we're being forced into our garages by the governments. And that's meant that a lot of people are now tackling those projects in their garages that they haven't tackled before, which is now putting more cars in clubs and therefore more members over to you guys.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. When you see the amount that people are spending, and you see the employment in the industry, there's a lot of people involved, and I'm sure the lockdown will have made a big difference. The survey that we carried out was based on information for 2019. We should have carried out the research at the end of this year and used 2020 as a base year, but clearly that was going to be a bit of a nonsense when you think about events and trips and people basically using cars. So we pulled the survey forwards, started earlier in the year and based it on 2019. But there's no doubt that what's happened in lockdown has given a lot of people an opportunity to get on and try and get cars back on the market, back on the road. What we have found is there's a lot of cars on Sawn, a lot of vehicles of all types, but cars in particularly on Sawn. And perhaps we'll talk about that a bit later.
We certainly will, because now we've got that exclusive. This is the first time this is going to be seen anywhere. We're delighted, guys, that you're sharing it with us, the enthusiasts. So let's look at that data. Let's look at this slide that we've got for you, and let's everyone sit down and enjoy it. It's all good news.
With your help from every part of the historic vehicle community, the Federation of British Historic Vehicle Clubs has pulled together all of the information we need for the 2020 National Historic Vehicle Survey. At the FBHVC, we like our stats. It instructs what we do, what policies we take, and what causes we fight for on the behalf of the historic vehicle community across the country. And the results of the 2020 National Historic Vehicle Survey are in. Just to remind you that a historic vehicle is defined as being 30 years or older and includes a wide range of vehicle types from cars to steam engines. If it has an engine and it's 30-something, it's very likely to be included in these results. So back to the survey. This is quite a remarkable survey with more than 15,000 of you taking the time to fill in our online questionnaire. That's a huge number by any standard. The respondents were all talking about their historic vehicles, and there were more than 32,000 vehicles in total reflected in the results. So with the basic background information out of the way, what can we tell you about the results? As you probably know, the whole idea of this survey is to inform people about the importance of the historic vehicle movement in Britain, and that has to start with the question, how many? So, just how many historic vehicles are there? 4 years ago, there were just over 1 million historic vehicles. Many were cars, but also bikes, tractors, and even steam engines were included as well. Bring that up to date, and in 2020, that figure has grown to 1.5 million historic vehicles in Britain today. So, 1.5 million vehicles is a pretty big number, but how many actual owners are there? Last time around, that estimate was a little under 500,000. And bringing that figure up to date, it now looks more like 700,000. That's around 1% of the UK population owning at least one historic vehicle. And we could spend all day wondering about what those historic vehicles do, but we don't need to. The survey reveals quite a bit there as well. For example, for those vehicles on the road, average mileage comes in at around 1,200 miles a year. So these are not day-to-day vehicles used throughout the year on a weekly basis. In fact, they're taken out so infrequently that they are actually quite a rare commodity on our roads. Okay, so let's keep the pace up and move on. They say money talks, so how much is being spent? Well, last time around there was an estimated spending figure of £5.5 billion. That included anything from engine upgrades to driving jackets. Bringing that figure up to date, and it's more like a whopping £7.2 billion being spent each year on anything and everything connected to historic vehicles. The survey can go much further and isolate the value of spending coming in from overseas, and this reveals just how important the industry that backs up the movement actually is. And that's a neat segue into the next and final area that we need to talk about: jobs. According to experts, there are nearly 4,000 businesses operating in the sector. And these can be anything from car dealers to lubricant manufacturers and coachwork providers, moulders to welders and restorers. The survey tells us that there are more than 30,000 jobs that are directly focused on the trades and skills associated with historic vehicles. And that brings me nicely to our last topic: apprenticeships. An encouraging figure, an estimated 12% of businesses in the sector are already operating some form of trainee apprenticeship. That's around 500 businesses. But what's perhaps more encouraging for young people looking to get into our industry is that far more businesses seem to be planning apprenticeship schemes or would consider doing so in the future. And that's great news for the industry as a whole in this country. So that's it. That rounds up the headline results from the 2020 National Historic Vehicle Survey by the FBHVC. In conclusion, it seems to suggest that the future is looking pretty bright for the historic vehicle movement in Britain, and that's a massive well done from everyone at the Federation. If you're interested and want to learn more, then visit the Federation website, where more information will be available shortly. In the meantime, have fun riding and driving your historic vehicles and keep getting them out there for everyone to enjoy.
Well, there you go, guys. That was absolutely fantastic. To pour through that data is just incredible. And it looks like our world The classic car world is just on the ascent. It's going up and up and up. And for those people out there that are worried that, you know, what's going to happen with the classic car in the future, I think Power by Numbers is certainly going to have the halls ringing down at Westminster, because this industry provides so much to the economy of this country. So let's just go through some of those figures. They were incredible. You say there's possibly 1.5 million vehicles. It's such a large number of vehicles out there. How did they come in with that total?
Well, we've been fortunate to get an extract of the DVLA information. It's a very expensive thing to obtain, but we've some friends who managed to do a special deal for us. When you review that information and analyse it, the vehicles that are registered prior to 1990, which is 30 years old, the universal definition, that's how we get to our 1.5 million.
Gotcha.
There are all sorts of issues, I'm sure, with the DVLA information, but it's a pretty good base. And you just got to remember that it's based on first registrations, but for most vehicles, it's a pretty good proxy for when they're made.
It's fantastic. There's another astonishing figure in there. I know that me, David, and you, Paul, contribute to this possibly more than we should do, which is the amount of total spending by enthusiasts. Because I know that we do spend quite a bit on our cars each year, but the figure again is kind of astonishing. It's £7.2 billion. That's a huge amount of money being put into the economy by the classic car community, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think the key to this is it does cover, of course, all sorts of aspects, including not only paying your insurance, the fuel, the oil, but there's close on £1 billion worth of foreign income coming into the country from enthusiasts abroad who are buying parts, buying cars, and that sort of thing. So it does demonstrate how valuable it is to the country.
I would imagine a huge part of that 7.2 billion is poor David and his 1936 Carter invalid carriage. That one put a big dent in the wallet, isn't it, David?
Well, that's been the project for this year. It's not been too bad because I've actually built the body myself. But every little bit helps. It all contributes, doesn't it?
Of course it does. Of course it does. And David, you must be delighted when you pour through these figures and see that this industry, this hobby, this movement, whatever you want to call it, it employs over 34,000 people.
Absolutely. You know, it's just makes it all so real. And as you know, because you've helped us in the past, present awards to apprentices at previous Classic Motor Show. And we know that we're bringing young people into the industry. You know, at the moment, we've got 100 apprentices in training and more to come. So that's brilliant. And that's really important because that's the future, not for maybe the three of us, but for the younger enthusiasts who are coming along, wondering whether to invest in historic vehicles. And the fact that so many young people are getting involved is brilliant.
Yeah, we see it every year. In fact, I think me and you spoke about it just last year when we was at the Classic Motor Show. We said, isn't it a delight to see so many young people filling the halls at the NEC, walking around, seeing the cars, big smiles on their faces, and seeing so many young people into their MGs and Austin 7s and Morrises. And, you know, that those clubs have got younger members joining, and it's a thrill. Because we are living in a time, and it's worth us mentioning, we're living in a time where we are getting figures from the government that say, you know, we are polluting, you know, this is a polluting society. We need to do something about CO2 going forward into the future. The classic car community reaches out to me regularly and says, Should I worry about the future? Should I worry that I'm not going to get petrol for my car in the future? What's your take on it?
So my take on it is it's all about balance. And actually, the statistics that we update every 5 years is critical, because when I go into Westminster, and you know, in more normal times, I'm probably there most weeks, actually to be able to talk about the 7.2 billion, the young people, the apprentice programs, all of that is good material to capture attention. But it's more than that. So, you know, we've just appointed an environmental director because we know that this net zero issue, we've got to address it now. It's no good saying, oh, well, it's 20 years away. We'll do something about that in 10 years' time. And it's really, really good, since we brought this new guy on the scene, that he's very proactive. And that's just a new facet to what the Federation is doing.
And what about, yeah, I was going to say, Paul, what about you? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, well, let me just give you a couple of facts. If you've got your pencil and paper there, you might want to jot these down to use for the future, because as you rightly say, there's a criticism of you're using older polluting vehicles and all that sort of thing. But actually, the vehicles, the historic vehicles are doing on average only about 1,200 miles a year. So when you add that all up, it represents only about 0.2%, not 2%, 0.2% of the annual mileage that vehicles drive in the UK. So it's a tiny proportion of any pollution and whatnot that's happening. If you look at the number of vehicles, on the face of it, there's both licensed and on SORN, and this is numbers out of the DVLA, there's 43.5 million vehicles in the UK. Well, you've already seen there's only 1.5 million of those fit into the classic vehicle category. And I guess one of the other key things, and I did touch on SORN earlier on, the proportion of historic vehicles that are on SORN is very high. Overall, just about half are on SORN. So if you do those calculations of 1,200 miles based on the vehicles actually on the road, we've a weeny proportion altogether. And I think you have got to consider, you know, these are heritage assets, and it's something that we talk about quite a bit. But if somebody came along and said, oh, well, I think the Queen's spending too much on a heating bill and she should have plastic double glazing in Buckingham Palace, you know, people would throw their hands up in horror. Well, you know, we're not about to say these heritage assets need to be changed with the equivalent of plastic double glazing.
It's a brilliant way of putting it. I love that analogy. I could just see Liz now just reaching for the lock on her plastic glazed window. That'd be fantastic. Listen, I think, you know, you're right, David. We all need to be talking about this right now. I think we should put it front and centre when we're next at these shows together and start talking about the solutions to that. I can see that the classic car will become more of a luxury item, where we're just, it would still be allowed to use our luxury cars because of the 7.2 billion pounds each year that gets slushed around this economy, the over 34,000 people a year being employed in this industry. I can see that the government will still allow classic cars to be there. I don't think there's any threat they're going to be taken off the road. They'd just be classified more of a luxury item, and therefore we'll probably be taxed for it in the fuel that we put in the cars at the pumps. That would just inevitably go up in price as the electrification takes over.
Yeah, Mike, just one particular point. The way you describe luxury cars there sort of comes across as everybody driving Ferraris, Rolls Royces.
No, a luxury item.
Yeah. One of the things that we did establish from the survey is that over 50%, 51% as it happens, of vehicles have a value of less than £10,000.
Wow.
So we're not talking about exclusivity here. Of course, there are £1 million cars out there, aren't there?
Yes.
You know all about that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of vehicles, and of course there's a lot of motorcycles and whatnot that have a much lower value. So yeah, about 51% are less than 10,000.
Yes, I would say to people out there, don't worry just yet. We should be talking about it. It's dialogue we need to have, but don't worry just yet. I don't want people to be put off going out there and buying a classic car because they're thinking in 20 years' time, am I just got to stare at it in the garage and I'm not allowed to fire it up anymore? I think, you know, we need to just open the dialogue, keep it going. Me and David and you, Paul, we're in privileged positions. We get to go to the House of Commons and talk to these MPs and all party motoring groups about these kind of issues. And it's something that we should bring to the fore as soon as we all possibly can. Now, you've been doing a lot as well I'm the patron of Sporting Bears, and there's been lots of pledges coming from the Federation of British Historic Vehicles Clubs over the years, and you've always been hugely behind it, which we thank you. It's been a shame because this year, obviously, our lovely Bears and all the money that we raise for these other charities, the motoring charities out there, have all struggled. It's been a tough one.
Yeah, it has been difficult. And personally, I was delighted when show director Lee Masters told me that the virtual classic motor show, you know, was going to be in support of Sporting Bears. I think everyone loves the Sporting Bears. What they do, they make the classic car experience real for people, because they can stand, look over the fence, take their pick and say, I'd like to go out in that one, pay their money, and off they go. And I think that's brilliant. I was talking to some of our commercial partners because, you know, a lot of what we do these days wouldn't be possible without the financial support of our commercial partners. And two in particular said, hey, if you're doing that, if you're going to support Sporting Bears, we will too. So I'm delighted to say we've got, I've got a pledge for £250 from our insurance partner, Peter James Insurance. And I've got another pledge of £250 from our tools partner, King Dig Tools.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
That's a pleasure. And we obviously we have to be careful how we spend money because it's our members' money. So we have to be very cautious. But we're putting £100 in as well. So that's pledges totaling £600 from us, which we're delighted to do.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, chaps. I know the Bears are delighted. It's been a very, very lean year for the charities, and we need to keep the Bears going. We need to keep that club and those enthusiasts rolling in because I always say this every year I'm standing on stage at the NEC, right opposite you, David. You hear me say it relentlessly. These Bears, they give up their cars, their time, their fuel, their petrol. They put themselves up in hotels overnight. It's an expensive weekend for them to come and just share their enthusiasm.
Sure.
And they do that with a big smile on their face, and 100% of all money raised to go for a drive in their car, 100% of it goes to the children's charities. They don't keep any for petrol, for hotels. They give everything to the children's charities. And also, David, you've been even more generous, I see, because you are going to get behind and you're going to promote Drive It Day 2021 in support of Childline.
Yeah, it's that was a brilliant opportunity that actually came out of the cancellation of Drive It Day 2020. And a day or two after we announced that, we were contacted by a guy called John Worth, who's a great historic vehicle enthusiast. And he's treasurer of the NSPCC, and started talking to me and saying, why don't you do something for charity? And the long shot of it is, we've reached an agreement that Drive It Day 2021 will be in support of Childline.
Brilliant.
And so really, really pleased about that. We've actually created a new website called driveitday.co.uk, and people are going to be able to buy rally plates from the 1st of December, and half the money we raise basically will be going to Childline.
That is absolutely fantastic. And I'm so excited already about Drive It Day, because hopefully us three will drive it somewhere. We will get together and just go and have a fantastic day out.
Well, it's quite interesting, you know, because as we've got deeper and deeper into a conversation with NSPCC, you know, they wrote to me the other week and said, right, we've got 30,000 supporters. How can they get involved?
Wow.
In Drive It Day?
Wow. Yes, they can.
Well, sure. Well, we're going to identify, I don't know yet whether it'll be 12 or 20 big venues that are capable of receiving lots of enthusiasm. And NSPCC, they're going to be at every one of those.
Fantastic. That's such good news. It's going to be an amazing day out. Let's hope it's at a time when we can, you know, just as soon as this world unlocks again and we're all allowed to go out and meet each other and shake hands and hug again. I can't wait to Drive It Day. It sounds so exciting. It's going to be absolutely brilliant.
So really good.
So if people want to find out more of the Federation of British Historic Vehicles Clubs, how can they get in contact with you guys?
Best course of action initially, look at our website, which is FBHVC.co.uk. There's tons of material on there, material about museums, apprenticeship programs, the whole thing. And there's a contact point. It worked for John Worth. He contacted us that way. And so we'd be delighted to hear from people.
Fantastic. Was you going to say something, Paul?
I was, yes. We've only scratched the surface of the information that we gathered from the survey. So over the course of the next few weeks in the run up to Christmas, we'll be publishing more information coming out of the survey. And I think people will find it really quite interesting, because we know that there's over 20 million people in the country who've expressed an interest in historic vehicles and see them as part of the heritage. So, you know, there's a lot of people out there interested. So keep an eye on the website and this information will be published. It'll be interesting.
Well, listen, guys, I want to thank you from behalf of me and everyone at the Lancaster Insurance Classic Motor Show with Discovery for giving us this exclusive, for giving us this news, sharing some time with me. I miss you, David, terribly. I'm not getting to get to see you this year, and let's hope we get together very soon. But in the meantime, you guys have an amazing Christmas, a wonderful New Year, and can't wait to get out on the road with you next year.